Hello, I'm Sally Pointer. Well, it's taken me to the end of the first term of my experimental archaeology masters before I found time to get on with some more of the videos I promised you. And today we're going to look at reinforcing stockings. Now, if you're doing historical work, or even if you're just wearing ordinary handmade stockings and socks, the last thing you want to do is spend all your time darning. But it's a necessary evil. It's just one of those things that happens. But there are things that you can do in advance while the socks and stockings are new that seriously reduces the amount of darning that you need to think about. And you can do this regardless of whether you've got a heavy duty pair of stockings. These are some of my woolen ones with a common heel, so turn it that way up, you can see the heel a bit better. Or a super fine pair, which are very similar in gauge to some of the really fine cotton ones you'll find on the market today, or even a silk pair. There we are, silk pair. This one's got a short row heel. So the heel style, the design, the material doesn't really matter. This method works on pretty much everything. This style of mending is usually called running a heel, but often it's just referred to as reinforcing thin areas of knitting. In my copy of Weldon's Encyclopedia of Needlework, which I think is about 1930, the diagram is really quite clear. You've got the reverse side of the knitting here, and they're showing that the threads are going through every second purl row and then alternating on the way back down. So really very, very straightforward, and the idea is that you're putting in strengthening threads that are barely going to show on the other side. Now, this style of mending has quite a long history. We've got records for at least back into the 1740s, and there are several quite well-known advertisements of women who are willing to refoot stockings, run heels, convert worn-out stockings into gloves, mittens, children's stockings, those sorts of articles. So we know that it's been around for a very long time, and this makes it a very good option if you're doing historical costuming. In terms of materials, you really don't need much. You're going to need a decent darning needle, and this is a nice vintage packet I've been saving, so we'll have a little look at what we've got in here. I'm not sure the exact date of these, but there were a lot of this type of packet in the post-war years. Now then, darning needles. That one's a bodkin, that's a darner, that's a darner. Right, that looks pretty good. Let's have a little look. So, darning needle for this sort of work, a large eye that you can get your yarn through. They're often relatively long and they tend to have sharp points, so it's a big embroidery or sewing needle. Normally you'd use a darning mushroom or a darning egg. Mine are actually hiding from me at the moment, so I am going to use a jam jar lid. Doesn't have to be complicated, it's just something to support your knitting. And I'm going to demonstrate, oh, let's just do it at the top bit of this. Let me just move my needles out of the way, because I've learned the hard way that a lap full of needles is rarely a good idea. So what you want to do is think about where your stockings wear out. So for some people it's going to be in the heel region, some people it's going to be under the heel. For a lot of people it's actually under the ball of the foot. So areas that aren't that easy to reinforce while you're knitting them. So perhaps you'd want to put an area here to strengthen it. But to show you, I'm just going to go into the top part of the knitting. And I'm going to do it in really bright red so that hopefully it shows up. If you buy stockings from me, I do include the same colour mending yarn with virtually all the pairs. But to be honest, you can use any appropriate mending yarn. If you were working on those fine silk stockings, you could use sewing thread, for example. So, whatever it is you're using to support your work, pop it underneath. Right, now then, can we see the wales and the purl loops here? Hopefully you can see that at the back of the knitting you've got these bumps. These are the purl loops. All you have to do is pick a row, and you're going to go, in this case, under one, over one, under one, over one. And you're just picking up the back of the row. Go through as far as you think you need to. Well, that shows up nicely, doesn't it? Leave a little bit of a tail. You don't need to put a knot in, but if you leave a tail, that will mush into the knitting as it gets worn. Now, coming back the other way, you want to use the alternate purl row. Okay, you see you're getting a nice sort of brickwork pattern starting to come along. And hopefully you can also see that this is pretty quick. You know, this isn't complicated. You don't need great needlework skills. Don't pull it tight. Try and leave your ends just a little bit loose. And that means you're not going to be pulling your stocking out of shape when you come to wear it. Now I'll do one more row and then we'll turn it inside out and see what actually shows up on the other side. And I'm expecting mine today to show up because I've used bright red, but hopefully you'll see that it's not going to be that obtrusive if you use a matching shade. Okay. So I used every other row here. If you've got an area, say under the ball of the foot, where you want it nice and squidgy on the inside, but it only just needs to be supported on the outside, what you can do is 1, miss 2, miss 3, 1, 1, 2, 3. So really broadly spaced. And then going back the other way, you'd be picking up, and I'm one over onto, there we are, picking up. So you can be very, very widely spaced if that lends itself more to your requirements. Right, so in this case you can see there's lots more yarn on the inside than there will be on the outside. So let's just snap that off. Take this out, we'll see what happens on the other side. Okay. Now considering I use bright red, can you see how little that shows up? It's really not that obvious, and if you'd done it in a matching yarn, that's going to be pretty nearly an invisible darn. And what's going to happen is that depending on why your wear happens, if the original stitching starts going thin, well, that stopped it laddering and it gives you a framework to do a darn on later. Or if it's because the pressure of your foot on the inside makes it wear from the inside, this is the bit that's going to get the wear and tear first. So hopefully, very quick and simple, but with luck, this has given you a sense of just how easy it is to run your stockings when you get them. Try and do them by the time you've worn them the first once or twice. Don't leave it any later than that. As soon as you've worked out where the pressure points for your foot are, so as I say, some people it's this bit on the back of the heel where your shoe just rubs against it. Some people it's under the ball of the heel, under the ball of the foot. Sometimes it's where you've got a funny bunion or a funny big toe and you might need a little bit up here. But that little bit of effort right at the start is going to make your stockings last so much longer. Bye for now.